a C to a B. So they should have a B in this category. They're stronger by degrees, strategic agenda. There we go. Not sure what's going on there. As I said before, the state has an excellent credit transfer system. It's easily one of the best in the nation. However, the big downfall really is not having an outcomes-based funding system. Now, considering the performance in the 4-year completion, this is something that we could certainly use to leverage going forward to help raise performance in that area. Now, I understand such a system is under consideration right now. I hope that you'll support its passage going forward, and I hope we can make that a reality, because I do think it can make a big difference. Now, the last overall category we'll look at is innovation. Now, this is a notoriously difficult thing to measure. How do you empirically measure how innovative a state is? But we think that this is a very important topic because, as we said before, states are having to do more with less, more so now than ever before. And in order to do so, we can't simply do things as we always have. We have to find new ways to deliver education to students. Of course, so one of the first things we looked at was whether or not states were welcoming in external providers who might be doing something innovative. After all, there's no good reason for every state to have to reinvent the wheel and create a new program from scratch when somebody else might be doing it very well, and it's very inexpensive to just let them do what they do best. That's certainly the case in states like Indiana or Washington State, where they've welcomed in Western Governors University, which is a nonprofit, online, competency-based school. Those two states have done was grant them in-state status, so any student attending Western Governors in Indiana or Washington is eligible for in-state financial assistance. Ultimately, what we did was we looked at state laws and regulations to determine whether or not the state was open to that sort of relationship, or if they were setting up roadblocks that would impede this practice every step of the way. Now here what we found was, simply put, Kentucky is among the most closed and restrictive states in the country. And this goes not just for the for-profits, which receive a lot of criticism. Some of it's justified, some of it's not. But this is also inhibitive to other public institutions and other nonprofit institutions as well. It's really not so much the case there. The state has one of the most burdensome regulatory structures. It has a hair trigger for activating regulation and a heavy dose of licensure or application fees in order to get started. Now, I want to be sure that we mention that we're not advocating for a Wild West kind of system where anything goes and there's no regulation whatsoever. But there are a lot of good programs out there and a lot of ideas that would cost the state very little to implement if they just did more to get out of the way. Now, lastly, we're looking at online learning. And while I fully admit, I'll be the first one to say that online learning, especially now, isn't the most innovative practice that there is. However, what you can say about online learning is a state's willingness to embrace and develop an online learning system is a demonstration of how willing they are to do things that are non-traditional and do things a little bit differently. So what we did was we looked at each state's online learning system, how comprehensive it was, whether or not they had goals for expansion, whether or not it was easy to use. Here, Kentucky receives a B for its Kentucky Virtual Campus, and this is a very robust system. It earned 5 out of 7 possible points, and it's something that could easily improve to an A if there were just a little bit more clarity around how to use the system and how to get the most out of it. But ultimately, this is a system that you can be proud of. So last thing I want to mention, I know the report doesn't make much for state recommendations. I just want to leave with a few thoughts of how we can improve post-secondary education here in Kentucky. The first is, we need to take some steps to improve graduation rates at 4-year institutions. And that will, if we do that and we accomplish graduating more students at a higher rate, that will naturally bring the cost effectiveness improve in that area. Implementing a funding structure, such as an outcomes-based learning funding structure, can help significantly in that goal as it places the incentives away from enrollment and towards quality and outcomes. And embracing new learning models and outside providers can also help attain that goal. Linking students to labor market outcomes can also help students and consumers make better decisions about their choices. We think that this is a strong thing going forward, not just to producing more degrees and to improving the post-secondary education system, but we think that's something that's vital to economic development in the state as well. We need to be able to make sure that there's alignment between the degrees people produce, institutions produce, and what businesses actually need. And lastly, Kentucky students need more help in making informed decisions in how they invest in their education. And we shouldn't be asking these kids to invest the equivalent of anywhere between 1 and 4 BMWs in order to participate in the labor market without giving them some basic information about how they should be making those decisions. And we think a lot of the labor market alignment that we have troubles with could be improved by simply giving them more information, giving them better information to help them understand what programs they can attend, whether or not they're going to live a good life and earn a quality wage when they get out. And we think that education is the answer, in particular here, to making this a better state to live in. Now, you can download the full report, and you can use our interactive web tool at our website, which is icw.uschamber.com/report card. It's got a lot of great data points and information. You can see every little data point that we use to grade our categories online. There's also the technical appendix there, and you can also sort to see how you measure up to other states in your area pretty quickly and easily. I encourage all of you to take a look there, particularly as you're going forward and looking at how to improve. So thank you so much for your willingness to listen to all that, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. We'll just ask you to stay with us and join the panel. We'll ask the panel if they would join us and come on up, and we'll start the proceedings in just a minute. Does anybody have, just as the panel makes their way up here, just a quick question to the microphone? Is someone going to make their way? Here's one. Dave has one. All right, let's take one question before we introduce the moderator, and we'll get the panel situated.
Dominic, thanks for your explanation of the report. I think it's remarkable that the U.S. Chamber has taken on this sort of analysis. My question is, and it might sound a little flippant, but it's not meant to be, who cares about higher education? And I mean that in the sense of, we send our kids to college. They either have a good social experience, a good academic experience. They either get a good job or they don't. The basketball team is either winning or it's not, and we make some fairly subjective conclusions about that college or university. In the scope of things nationally, business groups like the U.S. Chamber, in terms of foundations, government agencies, who else cares about how they're actually doing to compare? Is anybody watching this other than what you've just done through this exercise?
Yeah, there are a few other organizations, and one of the things that I make note of is that there's always been a lot of talk and a lot of debate about K-12 education. And I look at where we are today, and I look at where we were 20 or 30 years ago, and I see a lot of parallels. We're starting to have a lot of the discussions today around higher ed that we used to have. And I think we do have a long way to go to developing that going forward. But institutions like the Lumina Foundation, they're one of the leaders in looking at improving higher education with their big goal of producing a higher proportion of students or people in our society that have a college credential. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation certainly has been involved. The Joyce Foundation, to a more limited extent, looking more at the workforce development kinds of issues. We got a lot of our information from the Delta Cost Project, which takes an in-depth look at, I'm not sure that they actually exist in the same incarnation today, but they're around in some capacity. They look at a lot of the university finance kinds of issues and how much it should cost to produce a higher education degree. There are people like Richard Vedder, who's out there looking at some of these issues. There's a group run by a gentleman named David Paris, which is I forget the name of the organization, but it's basically a consortium of institutions out there that are dedicated towards improving the quality of the degrees they produce and measuring that through some kind of objective standard. So there are a growing number of organizations out there that are concerned with this. They could certainly use a lot of help because this is an issue. We talk a lot about indebtedness, we talk a lot about tuition, but we don't talk about the quality issues, and we don't talk about the labor market alignment issues that we're seeing today. So we do hope you get involved in one of those organizations going forward.